Welcome to tonight's story. As we delve into the intricate lore of Messmer, we'll journey through a world of mystery and shadows, where ancient secrets are revealed and forgotten tales come to life. To help you relax and drift into sleep, a calm ambience will be playing in the background, guiding you gently through the story's twists and turns. So settle in, close your eyes, and let the story of Messmer unfold as you drift off into a peaceful slumber. In the midnight hush of the shadowed realm, a tale of dark and twisted fate unfolds. At the heart of this somber story is Messmer the Impaler, a figure shrouded in fear and enigma. He emerges first as a villain carved from the darkest corners of imagination. A tyrant whose name strikes terror into the hearts of those who dare speak it. He was the merciless leader of a savage crusade, a figure cloaked in religious fervor, whose hands were stained with the blood of countless innocents. His title, the Impaler, draws a sinister line back through history to Vlad the Impaler, that infamous ruler whose cruelty was so profound it breathed life into the legend of Dracula. The method of impalement, where the human body is slowly pierced by a stake, prolongs the agony of death, leaving victims to languish for days, their cries for mercy echoing unheard. These tales are grim, woven with the threads of horror. Messmer the Impaler, much like his historical counterpart, is crafted to be a figure of nightmares. Yet, as the moon waxes and wanes, as the story unfolds its dark tapestry, a more intricate picture of Messmer begins to emerge. With each step deeper into the shadowed world, it becomes clear that his malevolence is not as straightforward as it first appears. A sense of tragedy clings to him like a mournful fog, revealing that he, too, is entangled in a web of suffering. His bloodthirsty campaign through the shadowed lands was not entirely of his own making. He was a puppet, a tool wielded by an even greater, more sinister force. While his hands are far from clean, the weight of his crimes does not rest solely upon his shoulders. By the time the tale reaches its climax, the line between villain and victim has blurred, leaving the audience to wrestle with conflicting emotions. Revulsion intertwined with pity. To truly grasp the essence of Messmer, with all his dark deeds and the shadows of his sorrow, one must journey through the entirety of his story. From the first haunted steps into the realm of shadows to the final, cataclysmic confrontation, his tale unfolds like a nightmare from which there is no easy escape. The story first reveals itself through the silent language of the environment. Some may lament that Messmer's presence is sparse, relegated to a mere 2 cutscenes and a single boss fight. But for those who listen closely, his shadow looms large over the landscape, The world itself whispers his name, the scars of his rampage etched into every stone and tree. In the haunted fields of the graveside plain, where gravestones stretch endlessly to the horizon, the air is thick with the memories of the dead. These gravestones, worn and crumbling, are more than just markers of death. They are spirits slowly fading into nothingness, a visual testament to a world drowning in its own mortality. This massive gravestone symbolizes a place suffocated by death, a kingdom brought to its knees under the weight of uncountable souls lost to the void. But never before has there been a sight quite like the graveside plain. Here, the dead stretch endlessly, a silent army of the fallen. And it is Messmer who is responsible for much of this death, his crusade leaving a trail of destruction that still festers in the land. The scars of his war are everywhere, etched into the very bones of the world. One of the first places you encounter is a town reduced to ruins, where every building is shattered and corpses dangle from trees like macabre ornaments. The few survivors that haunt the rubble have become something less than human, their bodies dissolving into shadows. Nearby, a furnace golem stands as a grim sentinel, a towering iron basket filled with the charred remains of the living. If you dare to look closer, you will see that some of these people died with their hands reaching out, desperate to escape their fate. They were thrown into the flames alive, their final moments a desperate struggle against the inevitable. Follow this cursed path, and you will find yourself at the gates of Castellensis, where the corpses of 100 more victims, impaled and charred, bear silent witness to the horrors inflicted there. Above it all, looming like a black stain upon the sky, is the Shadow Keep, the ominous fortress of Messmer the Impaler. This is no ordinary fortress. It is the quintessential lair of evil, a place so steeped in darkness that one might imagine it as the vacation spot of figures like Darth Vader or Sauron. Yet, if you were to turn away from this road of despair and head in the opposite direction, you would arrive at the Belurith settlement, a place that once stood as the heart of the Hornson civilization. The architecture here, with its classical statues and ancient phrases, echoes the grandeur of Greco-Roman or Persian ruins, hinting at a culture of great antiquity and pride. There is something mythic about the design of this tower, something that calls to mind the legendary Tower of Babel. In that ancient tale, humans, driven by hubris, built a tower so tall it sought to touch the heavens themselves, only to be struck down by disaster. Similarly, the Hornson's White Tower, according to the spiral tree seal, was said to reach up into the sky, its majesty inspiring awe, even among the devout followers of the Erd Tree. Through this visual storytelling, the Hornson civilization is portrayed as ancient, far older than the Golden Order of the Lands Between, whose architecture is inspired by later European medieval styles. But this ancient civilization, with all its splendor and history, was utterly destroyed by Messmer's crusade. This was no mere conquest. Messmer didn't just kill the people. He annihilated their very way of life. This was cultural genocide on a grand scale. Except, perhaps, it wasn't. For as the tale unfolds and we delve into the Shadow Keep, we discover a curious twist. In the largest tower of this dark fortress, Messmer has preserved thousands upon thousands of ancient tomes, looted from the Lurath and other haunts and settlements. Contrary to what one might expect from a villain so steeped in destruction, Messmer made a deliberate effort to safeguard the cultural and historical artifacts of his enemies. This is one of those moments where the shadowy figure of Messmer becomes more complex, where he begins to step out of the mold of a typical evil fantasy villain. There is no explicit explanation given for why he chose to maintain this vast storeroom of knowledge. According to the description of Fire Knight Hilda's spirit ashes, it was some of Messmer's closest comrades, the Fire Knights, who urged him to preserve this cultural legacy. But the final decision lay with Messmer himself. For reasons known only to him, he allowed himself to be persuaded to protect this library of ancient knowledge, even as he continued to slaughter the haunts and by the thousands. This small act of preservation hints at a deeper layer to his character, suggesting that perhaps he is not the unwavering zealot we first believed him to be. But let us return to the ruins of the Belurathtar settlement. If you look up from the shattered remains, you will notice something strange. The tower, once the pride of this city, is now shrouded in shadow, its entrance blocked by twisted, dark branches that seem to writhe with malevolent intent. According to the haunts and Grandam, this obscuring of the tower was the work of Messmer himself, though she offers no explanation as to why. After witnessing this strange sight, you may begin to suspect that there is more to Messmer's crusade than mere slaughter. He is not just hunting down every hauntsand he can find. He is hiding something hidden away in that tower. But that is a mystery for another night. So, what drives Messmer to such extremes? Why is he slaughtering these people, obliterating their culture, and guarding dark secrets in the depths of their once great tower? The Crusader insignia offers a clue. Its description reads, a talisman depicting a raised spear on a backdrop of flames, in remembrance of the lives lost in the sacred crusade led by Messmer. The warriors who fought in the crusade set aside both honor and mercy to wantonly impale and scorch those deemed impure. Those who felt invigorated by each cry of death were the same men who were certain of the sanctity of the campaign. This was a holy war, a religious crusade aimed at purging those deemed impure. Other relics and items scattered through the land speak to the brutality and bloodshed of Messmer's campaign. The Black Knight helm, for instance, is described as having a rotten odor that stubbornly clings to it. A silent testament to the horrors its wearer has witnessed and perhaps inflicted. There is a blackened helm worn by the soldiers of Messmer that seems to carry the stench of death wherever it goes. Perhaps this foulness stems from the tainted blood that splattered upon it during countless battles. Or perhaps it festers from the wearer's own soul, blackened by endless slaughter. And then there is the serpent flail, a dreadful weapon with coiled snakes for heads, each one burning with a fire that inflicts terrible agony. These were not mere tools of war. They were instruments of torture, used by Messmer's crusaders to brand the Hornsund with pain and fear. The cries of the suffering invigorated these soldiers, their delight in spreading terror evident in every blow. The description of Messmer's soldier on the set leaves no doubt. This was not an honorable war fought for noble causes. It was a war of butchery, carnage, and cold-blooded murder. But why, in the dead of night, did Messmer and his crusaders target the Hornsund? What had these people done to be deemed so impure, to be marked for such cruelty? The answer lies hidden in the description of the fine crucible feathered talisman, a relic fashioned from thin feathers that bear the aspects of various creatures. Creatures that were said to have once grown upon the human body. The Hornsund viewed the crucible as sacred, for it represented the refinement of their kind, most notably seen in their twisting, spiraling horns. The crucible was the primordial form of the Erdtree, a predecessor that shaped those it touched, granting them humanoid bodies with wings, tails, and the most prominent feature of all, those spiral horns. In the lands between, those touched by the crucible were often reviled. The omen, creatures marked by the crucible, were forced to live in the sewers or endure the painful removal of their horns. The misbegotten, another group touched by the crucible, were enslaved and mistreated. Yet, the people of the Hornsund saw these changes not as curses but as divine gifts. To be celebrated and revered, this, then, was a war of beliefs. A religious war between those who worshipped the Erdtree and those who held the crucible as sacred. A war between those who despised the changes wrought upon the body and those who embraced them. But there is a darker current running through this tale. Something more sinister than mere religious conflict. The Hornsund were treated even worse than the Omen or Misbegotten. While the Omen, persecuted as they were at least allowed to exist, the Hornsund were slaughtered without mercy, their entire civilization reduced to ashes. As the story twists and turns, it is revealed that when Messmer is finally defeated, the player gains access to his armor. The description reads, "On his mother's wishes, Messmer made himself a symbol of fear, undertaking the cleansing crusade she desired. This revelation casts a long shadow over Messmer's actions, making it clear that this was not truly his crusade, but that of Queen Marika. Messmer was merely a pawn, carrying out her orders. Perhaps the Hornsund were seen as a greater threat than the Omen or Misbegotten. Their ancient and organized civilization powerful enough to challenge Queen Marika's Golden Order. Yet, there may be a more personal reason for Queen Marika's desire to annihilate the Hornsund. To uncover this motive, we must turn our gaze to the strange, magical jars scattered throughout the world of Elden Ring. These jars are no ordinary vessels. Some, like the warrior jars, are sentient, filled with the corpses of human warriors whose strength they draw upon. But in the shadowed realm, the Hornsund use these jars in a far more gruesome manner. In the prisons of this dark realm, the jails are filled with jars, and within one of them, you can hear a phantom's desperate pleas to his captors, begging them not to place him inside the jar. He would do anything to avoid that fate. The Hornsund use these jars as tools of punishment, their potentates. The special butchers of Bonny Village, employing a dreadful method of carving up human bodies and stuffing them into jars. The flesh, chopped up and sealed within, eventually coalesces and is reborn into horrific living blobs of meat. But it is not just criminals who suffer this terrible fate. In Bonny Village, another phantom can be found, speaking to his next victim with chilling finality. For pity's sake, he says, "Your place is in the jar." For shamans, this is your fate, the purpose for which life itself was granted to you. In whispers of old, it's said that in the language of the East, they call such a one a Maiko, the shrine maiden, not just a shaman. Once, in ancient Japan, these shrine maidens were young women who walked the sacred paths, communing with spirits and the divine, performing rituals that bridged the mortal world with the realms beyond. Keep this in mind, for it will hold significance as our story unfolds. Female shamans, you see, were another group forced into jars by the Hornsund. Their twisted practices driven by beliefs as dark as the night itself. Nearby, there lies an item called the Tooth Web, and its description reveals a tale steeped in malice. A whip encrusted with rotting, misshapen teeth, filthy and seething with disease. Each strike from this cursed weapon doses its victim with deadly poison, and as the wounds fester, they grow inflamed, oozing pus. The flesh of shamans, it is said, was believed by the Hornsund to melt harmoniously with others, making it the key to their macabre rituals. These rituals, carried out by the butchers of Bonny Village, were meant to transform criminals into saints by carving up their bodies and sealing them into these magical jars. The flesh of a shaman was the binding agent in this grotesque process, ensuring the criminal's flesh would merge and meld into a single, horrific mass. If you look closely at the remains of these meat blobs, you might notice that at the center, the core upon which all the other flesh is melded, appears to be a female body. The last remnants of the shaman who was forced into the jar. The process was not a merciful one. Shamans were not simply killed. They were first tortured, whipped until their flesh was soft and malleable, ready to be fused with the others. If you had the misfortune to be born a female shaman in the lands of the Hornsand, your fate was sealed. Captured, tortured, and mutilated, all to serve in a bizarre ritual that claimed to grant sainthood to the unworthy. Not far from this twisted village, in the hinterlands of the Shadowed Realm, there lies an empty village of shamans, now desolate and silent. Its residents, it seems, were all taken and murdered by the Hornsand. This village, once vibrant with life and ritual, is now defended by two golden auditory sentinels and lies only a short distance from a finger ruin. In this forsaken place, two relics await discovery. The first is the minor Erdtree incantation, its description whispering of a secret incantation of Queen Merica. Only the kindness of gold without order. It reads, Merica, knowing there was no one left to heal, bathed her home village in gold. The second relic is a golden braid. A braid of golden hair cut loose. Queen Merica's offering to her grandmother. What was her prayer, her wish, her confession? The description asks, leaving the answer to the empty air, for Merica never returned home again. This revelation changes everything. This village of shamans was Merica's home. She, too, was born a shrine maiden. Her kinsman, taken and slaughtered by the Hornsand, fell victim to the same dark ritual she would later command Messmer to avenge. The crusade she led Messmer on, which she claimed was a holy war for the grace of the Erdtree and the purity of the Golden Order, was in truth a war of personal vengeance. Merica had used Messmer as a tool, a puppet to exact her revenge on those who had destroyed her village. The truth is laid bare. This was not a war of righteousness, but one of wrath. Merica had manipulated Messmer and his legions, deceiving them into believing they were holy warriors, when in fact they were mere instruments of a ruthless quest for vengeance. This knowledge does not absolve Messmer or his crusaders. They remain responsible for the blood they shed, for the choices they made. But it begs the question, how might those choices have differed if they had known the truth? Would they still have slaughtered so many innocents? Or would they have hesitated, knowing the war was driven not by divine will but by a queen's thirst for revenge? Would Messmer have agreed to lead the crusade at all? Or would the soldiers have followed him if they had known they were fighting a war wrapped in lies? Without Merica's deception, perhaps none of this would have happened. But our tale does not end here. For there is still the matter of that tower, shrouded in shadow. What is Messmer hiding there? At the top of the tower lies the Gate of Divinity, a place of tremendous power. It is the very location where Merica ascended to godhood, and where Impaler now plans to do the same. On one hand, it makes sense to hide this site of power from potential enemies. Merica would not want anyone to follow in her footsteps, to rise and challenge her reign. But on the other hand, there is a sense that Messmer is hiding something else, something more personal, more embarrassing to Merica, something she would prefer lost to history. The Haunted Grandam speaks of a treachery that taints the very stones of the Gate of Divinity. This gate, a portal to godhood, is crafted from the petrified corpses of thousands upon thousands of haunts and souls. To ascend to divinity, it is whispered that Merica committed an unspeakable sin at the top of that tower. There was deceit, a betrayal so deep that it led to the slaughter of countless innocents, an act that would forever alter how her people viewed her and her godhood. Her son, Messmer, now hides this terrible truth, keeping it buried in the shadows, protecting his mother's secret. But let us not stray too far from Messmer's tale, for his story is as tragic as it is dark. From the day he led the crusade, to the destruction of the haunts and civilization, to shrouding their towering shadow, all of his actions were driven by a single purpose: to serve his mother, Queen Merica. He did everything for her, fulfilling her every wish. And how did Merica reward her loyal son? She abandoned him. The description of the blessing of Merica, a consumable once created by the Queen herself, reveals that she had crafted several special healing drafts for her son. But never again. In the haunting halls of Castellensis, a phantom pleads with Merica to embrace her child, to give them a sign, to end the long, bloody war. Another phantom, in the shadowed keep, despairs, unable to accept the truth, crying out, "It can't be true." We have not been abandoned, but the truth is cruel. Despite her son's victory, despite the sacrifices made in her name, Merica never called Messmer or his armies home. Instead, the Fire Knights, those loyal to Messmer, were shunned and driven from their homes, exiled from the very land they had fought to protect. The Golden Order, which had once sent them into battle, now turned its back on them, leaving the Crusaders forsaken. And so, as we delve deeper into this story, we find a flicker of pity for Messmer. Yes, he was a monster, but he was his mother's monster, shaped and twisted by her will. She wished him to be cruel, and cruel he became. But to abandon him after molding him into such a creature, it was a cruelty beyond measure. We will explore the reasons for America's abandonment later. But for now, let us turn our gaze to the loyalty of the Fire Knights. The Fire Knight's helm bears a description that speaks of noble lineage. Each knight hailed from a renowned family within the Erdtree's upper echelons. But they were shunned, chased from their homes after pledging their allegiance to Messmer. Their armor, distinguished by its red cape and the twin golden snakes adorning the neck, marked them as Messmer's personal guard. They were close companions, bound to him even though they knew the truth of his cursed nature. His flames, like serpents, were a painful reminder of the fate that awaited those who stood too close. Yet, despite knowing his true form, the Fire Knights remained by Messmer's side, even at great personal cost. They were not alone in their loyalty. There was also Rowena, the Twin Moon Knight, once a Carrion princess, who disavowed her birthright to stand beside Messmer. She knew full well that not even the brilliance of the moon could offer him solace. Before long, she became known as the Sword of Messmer. And then there was Commander Gaius, whose remembrance tells us he was both a friend and a leader of Messmer's men. Cursed from birth just like Messmer. From these stories, we see that Messmer inspired fierce loyalty and deep friendship in his companions. People from all walks of life chose to follow him, no matter the personal cost. In this, Messmer is a mirror to Impaler. While Impaler also inspired extreme loyalty. He did so through magical charms, ensnaring the minds of his followers. When that charm broke, they turned on each other with vicious fury. Messmer, however, inspired loyalty without such enchantments. There was something within him, something genuine, that made people believe in him. That made them choose to stand beside him. Yet not all were so loyal. The Black Knight Commander Andreas, who once led the primary force of Messmer's army, was a man of great strength and command over the powers of the Crucible. Though he was a devout follower, after learning of Messmer's serpentine nature, he rebelled. His rebellion was met with a grim fate, imprisonment in an underground tomb. His son, Black Knight Captain Hugh, followed his father into rebellion and shared the same fate. Messmer mourned the loss of a brother in arms, another casualty of the curse that had haunted him from birth. Messmer's own remembrance reveals that a malevolent snake writhed within him, and in response, his very mother plucked out his eye, replacing it with a seal of grace. But even after doing this, her fear led her to hide her child away within the realm of shadow. It becomes clear that Messmer was born cursed. And because of this curse, he was sent away, reviled by the people of the lands between. His curse was so severe that it caused even his closest brothers in arms, like Captain Hugh, to turn against him, though others chose to remain by his side. And Messmer was not alone in his cursed birth. Morgith, Mo, Impaler, Melania, even Melina, They all carried different curses, each a symbol of their mother's sins. Marika's wrongdoings were etched into the very nature of her children, and Messmer was no exception. Commander Gaius's remembrance mentions that Messmer was like an elder brother to the lion, most likely referring to Rodden. Rodden, a warrior admired by all, once looked up to Messmer. This suggests that if Messmer's life had taken a different path, if his mother had not abandoned or deceived him, he might have been a hero, an inspiring figure in the lands between. If only they had been more accepting of him. But alas, that was not to be. Now, as we approach the climax of this tale, we must prepare ourselves for the ultimate confrontation, where all these threads of fate and betrayal converge. A champion of the Golden Order, who resides not in the light of the Erdtree, but in the deep shadows of his throne room, the very top of the Shadow Keep. When you finally encounter him, the room is eerily dark, devoid of the golden radiance one might expect from a supposed servant of the Erdtree. Messmer, it seems, has spent all his days in this gloom, consumed by his own dark thoughts. As you approach, a cutscene begins. Messmer, with a voice that carries both command and weariness, calls out, "Mongrel intruder," yet, as he speaks, his tone softens, tinged with surprise as he recognizes you. A tarnished, stripped of grace in his words. You can hear his disbelief that a tarnished would be allowed to claim the title of Elven Lord. It is clear that he believes you were sent by Marika, whom he still refers to as mother, though this will not remain so for long. The entire purpose of Messmer's crusade, as he understood it, was to purge the impure, a mission given to him by Marika herself. And now, here stands someone he views as impure, poised to ascend to the highest position in the Golden Order. But Messmer does not question it. He resolves that his purpose remains unchanged. He will continue to kill those without grace, adhering to the commandments given to him by his mother, no matter how foul they may be. As the scene unfolds, we are introduced to the serpents that seem to be closely associated with Messmer, a detail that will grow more significant as the tale progresses. And then, the battle begins. You clash with Messmer in a fierce struggle, and when his health wanes, a second cutscene reveals the true nature of his curse. In this moment, Messmer cries out, "I will not suffer a lord devoid of light. No, Mother, forgive me." Then, in a voice filled with sorrow and defiance, he warns, "Soon, tarnished, wilt thou be taken in the jaws of the abyssal serpent, shorn of light?" It is here that we learn of the deep hypocrisy at the heart of Messmer's crusade. He has spent his life slaughtering those deemed impure by the Golden Order, yet he himself has been hiding an even greater impurity, one that lies deep within his own body. Messmer was born with a serpent rooted in his flesh, entwined with his very soul. a curse that could never be removed. The serpent within Messmer represents something foul, but it is not greed, as it was with Rykard's serpent, which symbolized an insatiable hunger that sought to devour the world. No, Messmer's serpent symbolizes sin, but not his own. It is the sin of his mother, Marika, reborn as a curse in her son's body. If you look closely at Messmer's form during the second phase of the battle, you can see the shape of the serpent bulging beneath the flesh of his arms and legs. Even in the earlier phase, there are hints of this dark presence. As the battle rages on, Messmer begins to transform, his attacks revealing the serpent within. The curse runs so deep that he is in essence the serpent itself. This transformation is a familiar sight, echoing the fate of others who have been forced to reveal their true selves. Consider Morgoth, who, during your battle, reveals his cursed own blood. Or Melania, who, when pushed to the brink, embraces the scarlet rot, her body twisted by the affliction. After their transformations, both are left blind, much like Messmer after he is burned by his own flame. He sought only to be the child his mother wanted him to be. Yet, it was Marika herself who placed a ceiling within his skull, hiding the serpent that dwelled deep within him. Even as Messmer speaks in his final moments, he still calls her mother, his voice trembling with a mix of sorrow and regret. He apologizes before removing the seal, as though he fears he is embarrassing her or falling short of her expectations. In every word, every action, Messmer's devotion to Marika is clear, even now. But beneath that devotion lies a deep well of self-hatred. Messmer declares he will not suffer a lord devoid of light, yet he himself is such a lord, one who has lived in darkness. He vows to burn those stripped of grace, though he has just stripped himself of whatever grace he might have possessed. If he ever had any at all, his self-loathing mirrors that of Morgoth, who despised his own cursed blood. The Golden Order, with its rigid hierarchy, has instilled in these characters a belief that their true selves are base, wrong, and deserving of persecution. They are believers in this cruel order, and so they must also believe in their own unworthiness, which fills them with anger and misery. Now, let us speak of Messmer's flame. Flames, like serpents, can symbolize many different things in a story. In the tale of Elden Ring, there are many flames: the giant's flame of ruin, the ghost flame of the dead, the black flame of the Godskin apostles, each representing different ideas. But Messmer's flame is unique. It is not the flame of the giants or any other known fire. It is a new flame, one that symbolizes violence, destruction, warfare, misery, suffering, and hatred. All the things Marika inflicted upon her enemies now turned against her in the form of her own child. Rather than confront the curse, a symbol of her own sins, Marika chose to hide it, to use it against her old foes, and then to abandon it altogether. When you finally defeat Messmer, listen closely to his last words. Maloga, a curse upon thee, he calls out first, reaching out to his mother. But then he pauses, catching himself, and in that moment, he changes. For the first time, he refers to her not as mother, but as Marika. By doing this, he disowns the familial bond that had once connected them, just as she had disowned him. In his final breath, he curses her, the bitterness of his abandonment pouring out in those last moments. If you were to look behind Messmer's throne, you would find a statue he kept close at all times. It depicts Queen Marika holding an infant, a symbol of her love for her children. Remarkably, this is one of the only statues of Queen Marika in the realm of shadow that has not been beheaded. At first, it seemed as though the Hauntsent were the ones defacing the statues, which made sense given their hatred for her. But even in Messmer's own camps and fortresses, the statues have been defaced. This likely reflects the Crusaders' anger toward their queen, but not Messmer. He held onto this one, kept it intact, as if clinging to the hope that his mother still loved him. Yet in his final moments, he finally lets go of that hope, accepting the truth that he has been left to waste away and die alone. And so, with his last breath, he curses his mother. In the end, Messmer is a complex figure, perhaps one of the most intricate antagonists ever woven into a tale. On one hand, he is a monster, a murderer, a hypocrite, and his crimes cannot be excused, no matter how tragic his personal story. But on the other hand, there are glimpses of something noble, something honorable within him. He preserved cultural and historical knowledge, inspired incredible loyalty in a diverse cast of characters who made great sacrifices for him. He had a close relationship with General Elden, and above all, he was deeply devoted to his mother. Yet, as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that the true villain in Messmer's tale is not Messmer himself, but Queen Marika. His curse was her curse, and because she could not face that truth, she cast him away, lied to him, manipulated him, and ultimately abandoned him to his fate. Without her deceit, without her fanaticism, Messmer might have lived a noble life. He could have been an inspiring leader in the lands between, perhaps even the next lord of this realm. And if that had been his path, I believe he would have ruled with dignity. He bore a heavy burden, one that weighed upon him like a curse. Messmer chose to shoulder all the blame, all the anger, and all the sorrow that stemmed from his mother Marika's relentless crusade. He took it all upon himself, a corrosive rot far more insidious than the one that afflicted Melania. In doing so, he became a shield, a barrier between his mother and those who despised her. Yet, for all his sacrifices, what did Marika ever do in return for her son? Queen Marika, the enigmatic ruler of the Golden Kingdom, has always been a perplexing figure. It has been difficult to unravel her true motivations, to discern how much of the kingdom's misery and the curses that plagued it were her doing. But after witnessing the depths of her actions or inactions, I am more convinced than ever that Queen Merica is the true villain of this tale. Not the Greater Will, not the mysterious fingers, not Rodigon, nor any of their children or the other outer gods. It is Marika herself, not out of malice, but because of her failures. Failures as a leader, and most tragically, as a mother. The day will come when I delve deeply into her story, uncovering every shadow and secret that shrouds her. But that day is not today. Thank you all for watching and joining me on this journey through these haunting tales. I hope you found the story of Messmer as captivating and complex as I did. There are many more stories yet to unfold, and I look forward to sharing them with you. Until then, rest well, dream deeply, and good night.